Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Jim.
So as part of the board, several of us are board members here. We try and come up with speakers each month, and it looked like we wouldn't have anything for this month. And I was at the American Humanist Association's annual conference in Chicago in June, and they had a lot of good speakers. I'll tell you a little more about that in a minute. But I thought, this is humanists. We got to present some of this good material to the humanists. So I teach a secular Sunday school class also. And I needed a subject for this week and next week. I need something for this week to teach. So I said, well, I'm going to do this future of mating and marriage for this Sunday school class. It's a secular Sunday school class. It came out of a Christian church, but it's now about 80% people on Zoom. And we're in Florida, Pittsburgh, Michigan, Texas, Washington, D.C. There's 3 couples in Pittsburgh. And so what happened was I wrote the script for the Sunday school class. I wrote the script for this today because I thought the Sunday school class is September 17th or 24th, and last week said, oh no, you're speaking this morning. So I just gave this talk from 9:30 to 10:30 on Zoom from home, and I'm going to give it again. And this is the humanist version. I wouldn't have changed it for them anyway. It's an interesting class. It's a class I've been in 25 years. It started about 35 years ago, a bunch of 22-year-olds with babies, and all the babies are now 40-year-olds, and the classes kept going. And I joined it 20 years ago because they never did religious stuff. We did one book of the Bible a year and closed with a prayer, which I didn't like. About 20 years ago, we quit the prayer, quit the Bible, and it's completely secular. And as I say, today we had 3 people in the classroom at a church in Allentown, and the other 20 people were from all over the U.S. because they already retired and moved away, basically. Anyway, so off we go. Let's see here. I guess I'll get on glasses. So, my name is Jim Palmquist. I'm on the board with a bunch of people around here, and we like humanism. And I am the treasurer of the American Humanist Association nationally, which I have a way of networking my way into jobs that are beyond my ability, but I still do it. I network in, and I am the treasurer on the board. And I went to the conference in Chicago. My son lives in Indianapolis. I have 3 grandkids out there, so I spent a couple days with him and then drove into Chicago. And I got there, and they had a machine to sign in your name, and it generated a sticker with your name, and it said organization. Well, I worked for Air Products many years ago, so I left it blank. And as I walked away, I said, oh, you screwed up. You're part of the host organization. You're on the board. So I went back and got one, and I had talked to people for the first day, and they said, okay, Jim, so who's this guy? You know who he is. And next time they saw me, it says board member, treasurer, American Humanist Association. They said, oh, you're a bigwig around here. So anyway, I've been a treasurer for 6 months, so it's not exactly a bigwig. But anyway, so anyway, you all know we're on Meetup. I'd like to see more events on Meetup, but we have a great book club. I don't want to sell everybody in coming, but Pat and Lynn and James, and there's a lot of people here that go to our book club. We have a great time. We just met last Tuesday, August 26th. We have a game night, September 22nd is on Meetup. Brian is not here today, I don't think, but he runs those for us. The next book club is September 23rd. We've got an interesting book that Pat proposed, right? Oh, no? Oh, it wasn't you? Okay. Anyway, it's an interesting book. Steve, okay. We also had a Lunching Secularly program. It was run by, I forgot her name, but she moved away, and then Becky took it on for 1 or 2 events, and others are involved in that, but we're going to try and get that running again shortly, Lunching Secularly. I'm going to pass a donation basket. We don't really solicit funds, though I want to remind you, this is a membership organization. If you haven't paid your membership dues, hop on the website, lvhumanist.org website, and pay I think it's $30 dues. And we don't need a lot of money, but this is our income, and also a membership dues would be nice to do. Okay, and Paul Ryan, our wonderful treasurer, will grab that money and take care of it. If you have a suggestion, we don't have a speaker for the October 5th meeting. We're going to have a meeting, but we have a lot to discuss about our website and other things, just a general conversation. That's what we'll probably end up doing. So the restrooms you can go behind here, or you can go out that door to the left in the back. There's restrooms. I'd ask you silence your phones. Not that it makes that much difference to me, but mine's already silenced. And I just want to give a commercial here. I'm a docent at a helicopter museum, and I have a very good tour that I give. I show people how you fly a helicopter. We don't go airborne, but I show them how to fly it, how the rotor system works, how the tail rotor works, how turbine engines work, how piston engines work. And if you've got a young person in your life that would like to know more about aviation, let them know I'd love to go down and spend a couple hours at the American Helicopter Museum. It's in Westchester, so it's an hour and a half drive, or almost an hour and a half drive. But I'd be glad to do that. I'm interested in advancing helicopter knowledge in the world, and I've become very good at it. I flew 6 different helicopters, Navy and the Army, so I have a lot of background. Okay, so let us get on our way here. So my talk, can you all see this? Paula, can you see the screen well enough? Okay, super. All right. So my talk today is Swipe Left, Swipe Right, the Future of Mating and Marriage, a Humanist Perspective. This came from a talk by a guy named Dr. Darrel Ray at the American Humanist Association's 84th Annual Conference, Humanists Move America, in June of this year in Chicago. Darrel Ray is a doctor of education. He's a psychologist, consultant, and lifelong student of religion and sexuality. He holds a BA in sociology anthropology from Friends University, and that's the Quakers. I don't know much about them, but that's the Quakers. An MA from Scarrett College, and a doctor of education in counseling psychology from Vanderbilt University. He's written several books. One is The God Virus, How Religion Infects Our Lives and Culture, and the second is Sex and God, How Religion Distorts Sexuality. I had a chance to chat with him. He's about a 60-year-old, 65-year-old. So anyway, I thought it was a pretty good idea, a pretty good talk. What happened at the convention is that they offered 4 speakers the opportunity to present big ideas for the future. And at the end, all four speeches were evaluated and voted on. And this was not the one that won the most votes. But this was, I think, better than the woman that actually presented the most votes. If you're a member of the Humanist Association, the woman that won these big ideas contest is in the Humanist magazine this week. It just came out this week, and her article is in there. But I think Darrel Ray's content is actually better, so we're going to go off that direction. So off we go. So, and speak up if you want. I know this is a little bit of, I won't say it's dry, but it's got a lot of good ideas in it. But I don't have any images, hardly any images and stuff, so it's maybe a little bit dry. But speak up if you have questions. We have time to process stuff if you'd like. So the introduction, culture, mating, and the changing landscape. One of the greatest joys in life is being in a long-term, supportive, and emotionally safe relationship. I mean, there's nothing quite like it. No matter what relationship style you choose, most of us are seeking something that provides secure environment from which to face the world. Someone who has your back, someone who can take you to emergency room, someone who can talk to you after a difficult day, someone who is so emotionally and sexually available, someone who cares and takes an active role in making your life easier, and someone you can actively support and make their life more rewarding. These are the things most of us want, but they often seem hard to get, and it takes time to develop trust in another person. At the same time, we see how often relationships fall apart. We see the fallout, anger, and feelings of betrayal and vitriol in people who were once madly in love with each other. It is scary to think that 2 people who could not keep their hands off each other 5 or 10 years ago, people who posted every step of their love life on social media, every kiss, every event, are now sworn mortal enemies. The relationships weren't scary enough. Now we can see them explode in real time on social media. It's enough to make anyone swear off dating and mating. But no matter what, we still want that warm, secure feeling that only a safe, close relationship can bring. So the conflict is real. And an important part of recent massive change, at the same time we see often fall apart. Okay. The conflict is real, and an important part of recent massive change in mating habits of the species known as Homo sapiens. If you want evidence that mating patterns have massively changed, we need to look no further than marriage rates across the globe. This next slide, I apologize for. It's a PDF pasted into a PowerPoint. I know it's not legible, but I can give you the information so you get an idea. The left-hand axis was, first of all, this is marriage rates per 1,000 people per year. This is 1886, and the right-hand axis is 2020. And this is 0, here's 2, 6, 10. So in 1886, marriage rates were 10 per 1,000 people for decades and decades until you got to, here's World War II. Right after World War II, there was a lot of marriage. And then the data breaks down around 1970. It breaks down into 5 countries. The top line is the United States, South Korea, Poland, United Kingdom, and Mexico. And so, whereas it's been 10 marriages per 1,000 per year up to this point, we're down to the point where the United States is around 5 marriages, and Mexico is down around 3 marriages per 1,000 per year. So this is not an aberration. This exists throughout almost every country in the world, that marriage rates are dropping at a precipitous manner.
Those include cohabitants that are not married, but effectively are or probably not. Like in other words, if you added them, people just living together,
Yeah.
would it still be, I'm wondering if it would still be.
It might, yeah, that certainly is a factor. That certainly is a factor that people are choosing not marriage, but this is not cohabitants. I'm sure it's marriage. It's marriage data. Okay, what am I doing here? All right. Let's see. So at the same time, divorces have dramatically increased as a proportion of marriages in almost all countries. In China, the marriage rate has plummeted as the divorce rate has skyrocketed. In the U.S., rates seem to have stabilized. Divorce rates have stabilized around 50 to 55% of marriages end in divorce, and that's far higher than 1970 or earlier. And he says, this is he didn't substantiate this, but this is his statement. If 50% of marriages end in divorce, within the remaining 50% that don't get divorced, about half are sexually dead or otherwise unhappy, but still together. One of his data points on this is both of his grandparents are still alive. So he's got 4 grandparents, and they're all proud of their 50-year marriages. He said they all hate each other. they stayed together, but they actually hate each other, and it's not really been a satisfying relationship for them. And at the same time, birth rates have plummeted. Most countries in the world have birth rates below replacement of 2.1 births per woman. So if you don't have 2.1 births per woman in your country, your population is going to actually decrease. In the U.S., we're at about 1.66 births per woman. So we're below the replacement, but we used to have a lot of immigrants coming in that kept our population growing. And of course, the last 6 months, I don't think any immigrants are coming in at all except for Afrikaners from South Africa, and that's not enough to make up for the shortfall. So it's one of the problems we're facing, I think. So something is changing globally in our mating strategies, and it's happening fast over the last 40 years. He says there's a lot of studies been done on this, and it's not. He's not sure what's going to happen, but he thinks this is a key time to make plans for our future and to make it better for everyone. So he says what plummeted. What am I doing here? So something has changed. I think I must have gone back here a slide here. I don't know. So I give a talk for ARP, and I like to do it real smooth, right? And the lady that runs it she's an educator, and 60-year-old educator, and she said, "Oh, make mistakes. I used to put slides in backwards, and make it lively, So anyway, I'm not trying to do that, but that's what happens. So we'll get by here somehow." So what I say today may not be directly relevant to you if you're in a great relationship, but it will affect your children and grandchildren. It's going to affect society as a whole. It is affecting society as a whole and will get more impactful as time goes on. The cultural template that worked for centuries has dissolved. In the past, you married the boy or girl next door or at your church or someone you found in college, and generally we found our mates in the local community or in close proximity. With globalization, we can look across entire continents to find partners. You all know that. So mating today, certainly mating has changed. We're not meeting in churches or in school, and we're not even getting out to meet. Dating apps have taken the place of sock hops in school and church socials and bars. Even the workplace is off limits for dating in many ways. Dating apps were invented to find and maybe marry someone without having to rely on all the old ways of meeting. But he says, dating apps are actually designed to keep you single. Unfortunately, the cold hard fact is that is true, that we have a decade of research to show that swiping left or right does little to connect you to a potential mate. and I'm going to edit. This isn't in his script, but this is one of the things he offered is, when you make a judgment on appearance, you're swiping against people that have good values that you could relate to well, and you're selecting appearance-wise for people whose values don't match yours. So appearance is not the only criteria, and maybe not the main criteria for selecting a mate. So this swiping left and right really undermines your potential of finding a serious relationship. And he says that dating apps may be programming our brains in the opposite direction by deceiving us into thinking if we just keep swiping, there's always a better option coming.
It's like a slot machine.
In fact, a dating app that was real successful at making marriages would go out of business, right? Because people would quit swiping and quit the subscription. So and he says these are similar to casino tools that are designed to re-engage you and to continue to bet money and to continue to play the game forever. Anyway. And he also points out that people that are heavily users of social media also have got less stable marriage relations. He picks in southern India, where social media use is low, marriage rates have remained steady. That he thinks that social media, to some extent, undermines marriage rates. I'm not there's probably some work to be done to substantiate that, but that's what he says. And he said that many cultures on this planet do not follow Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, or Muslim models of marriage and relationships. The models that seem so normal to us are fairly recent in human history and are largely a product of patriarchal religious influence. I mean, one of the guys the previous time I gave this talk, he added a comment. He said, back in 1860s, people didn't marry for love. Families married, got couples together to build support for the next generation of kids, and love was not really a factor in it in those days. It was a business relationship to support children. But anyway, so I don't know what marriage, and he says, the speaker says, he doesn't know what mating will look like in 20, 30, or 50 years. But I doubt it will mirror the patriarchal monogamy or polygamy of the last millennia. So the question is, what kind of partnership fosters autonomy, honesty, and mutual growth? If we're to chart a new course for relationships beyond the religious and patriarchal templates of the past, we must start by asking what kind of partnerships foster autonomy, honesty, and mutual growth. And this is where humanists come in. As humanists, we have a rare opportunity, free from religious dogma, to reimagine the love based on consent, autonomy, and mutual support. Before we dig deeper into individual choices and cultural beliefs, he said, let's zoom out. There's something older than apps and deeper than hormones that help humans form lasting bonds, and that is community. The power of community in modern mating. The author says he doesn't have magic formulas or profound ideas, but I think there are key factors that might facilitate relationship and family formation. I think people looking to build strong, committed relationships face a much stronger headwind than he did in his 20s and 30s, and he's in his 60s now. In fact, he said, I believe it's harder for anyone than it was 30 or 40 years ago to form relationships for reasons I've explained and also many that I have not covered. But one of the more important factors that often overlooked is community. Community gives us structure instead of overwhelming choices and distractions. They offer a pool of people who likely share core values. That's why religion was such a successful way to find a mate in the past. Communities offer gentle support, helping us to listen to and understand one another in ways that superficial dating apps never will. This is where you're getting into values connections that you can't see on a dating app. I'm not saying that communities are the answer to current mating issues, but they have historically been essential to human connection and partnership. And we're not necessarily searching for mates here, a lot of us. However, that's what we have here is a community to connect with people more deeply than on a dating app. So this is a tumultuous time for relationships. We want something, security, children, commitment, variety, stimulation, and satisfaction, but we don't know how to get it. The old cultural template is dissolving, and there's no clear path forward. Let's have compassion for anyone struggling to find a partner who feels confused or disheartened by today's dating culture. As those of us who are currently in happy relationships were transported back to our 20s, I don't think we'd do much better. So let's talk about redefining marriage in terms of long-term relationships. Okay. What am I on here? I'm on 19. Community board, I did that. We did that, okay. Marriage. So redefining marriage and the realities of our of how our species mates. So what do we want in a relationship? Sex and attraction are often an initiating spark, but those fade with time. It's after the sexual edge is worn off that most people can begin building a foundation for a long-term supportive relationship. And this is also when you can make more rational decisions about how to shape the partnership. Relationships go through stages, each with its own challenges and rewards. And people that don't realize that are set up for more difficult marriages. People that understand that people evolve really do better with marriages, I think. Extremely few relationships of any kind last a lifetime, but the speaker said he believes there's much we can do to help them last a long time while being emotionally stable and mutually rewarding. If the marriage will last 50 years, that's wonderful, but even a great 50-year relationship requires regular maintenance and intentionality. So the power of community in modern mating. What am I doing here? I don't think my clicker is working correctly. Okay, what am I on here? For some reason I'm going back here. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay. So take the concept of lifelong marriage and sexual exclusivity. That's a cultural construct. We take it as given, but it's actually a cultural construct. If you were raised in a culture where sex wasn't tied to marriage, but how about if food had highly restrictive rules? That was the nature of pre-contact Hawaii. Marriage was reserved for the royalty, and people could be executed for eating the wrong food. No one cared who you slept with in pre-contact Hawaii. Or the Na culture was once visited by Marco Polo, where the word for husband and wife don't exist, and fatherhood is unrecognized. Or the Amazonian tribes that practice portable paternity, where a woman believes she has to have sex with multiple men to have a healthy baby. So those are really out there in the way of ways of living. But the point is that exclusivity in long marriage is actually a cultural construct that we're dealing with today. Okay. One of the most destructive cultural beliefs about relationships is the idea of ownership. I own and control your sexuality. We hear it in most love songs. You belong to me. I can't live without you. You're my reason for living. Your cheating heart. These are codependent sentiments, not healthy relationship goals. Most people eventually feel trapped when they're treated as if they're an emotional slave to someone else. If a couple can't negotiate autonomy, it's often only a matter of time before one partner breaks the rules in order to reclaim independence. I think it's very interesting that queer communities, the LGBT communities, by necessity have long reinvented what love and commitment can look like, more honestly and creatively than mainstream culture allows. Before they had marriage equality, they didn't have the marriage structure to hold their partnerships together, and the partnerships had to negotiate as time went on, and they evolved and separated over time too. And of course, they weren't affected by patriarchy, so they tended to renegotiate their relationships from time to time, and maybe more than straight people did. As humanists, we can rise above the cultural programming that traps us in unrealistic relationships assumptions. What do we want? I want a supportive partnership. I want a pair bond that allows each person to be who they are, not what others expect them to be. We can negotiate what trust means. We can be what it means to be supportive. We can communicate our needs and desires while recognizing that our partner is not responsible for our happiness, nor is our partner in control of our sexuality. So let's talk about what cheating actually is. It's a violation of agreement without consent. But why do most people cheat? Because they're not getting a need met within the relationship's existing rules, and they don't know how or can't renegotiate the terms of the relationship with their partner for fear of losing their partner. I don't know this personally, but this is a counseling psychologist that spent 30, 40 years in the business. And he said that most cheating is related to the fact they don't have a relationship that they can renegotiate needs in their relationship. And they're worried about losing the partnership, and so by bringing up the issues, so they cheat. So how can we negotiate agreements to ensure greater fulfillment for both people? Are agreements made 10 or 20 years ago realistic today? In my marriage, that's true. They're not realistic today. They evolve as our needs change and our interests change and our lives go on. Can relationships be negotiated? Are they locked in stone? Does one partner's belief about sexuality dictate the other's behavior? Is enforced celibacy a true partnership? If one partner is no longer interested or attracted, does that mean the other must abstain? These are questions humanists can ask because we're not bound by religious dogma or moral requirements about sex and relationships. These questions aren't easy to answer because the rules we've inherited from religion are deeply embedded in our minds and culture. But let's remember, there's nothing natural or universal about the patriarchal ideas of marriage and sex. Mating, childbearing, and sex can take many forms if we're no longer constrained by those notions. So redefining trust and autonomy. Going back on this cheating, I didn't care for the logic of this, by the way. I didn't rewrite his whole script, but I would have actually organized it a little differently because we're going to go back and talk a little more about cheating. We just got done talking about it, but he went back to talk about it some more. So what does cheating mean to you? Is it a breach of trust or a breach of expectations that were never truly agreed upon? What he's saying is the expectations, the lives of the two people involved in the relationship have evolved, and their expectations have changed, and they never really discussed them. They didn't feel that one partner didn't feel they could bring it up without losing the relationship. And he threw out the question, have you ever felt trapped by a relationship rule you never consciously chose? I don't know that I could pick one out of my mind, but I have to think about it for a while. And there's another issue that he goes into, and that's the sweet, seductive siren in the corner, romance. It makes our hearts flutter, the playlist tragic, and our judgment questionable. So romance is beautiful, it's powerful, but it's actually misleading. And many of us love romance. We love romantic songs, celebrate Valentine's Day, remember our first love. Romance is the expression of intense feelings we experience when attraction blooms. It's part of our biology as a sexual species. Whole industries exist to capitalize on our romantic fantasies. Hallmark movies, country music, the Eagles, a lot of pop music, and so much more. In some communities, this initial romantic era feeling is called new relationship energy that comes from having a new relationship. And it's a gift of our biology, but it only lasts a limited time. After that, you'll need to stimulate other hormones and build a more grounded connection if you want to stay together. So romance is fun, inspiring, and emotionally rich, but it's also a Western invention. Most cultures don't have what we call romance. While cultures seem to have the concept of love, romantic kissing, he says, is unknown in 54% of surveyed cultures. When we spend more time comparing on a dating app than connecting, or chasing a dopamine hit of romance, we begin to confuse stimulation with intimacy. That's not love. It's actually just neural noise. And he said, I'm not here to kill romance. Romance is a great part of our lives. But we need to apply the same critical thinking we apply to religion. Even the most passionate romantics don't live out the lyrics they sing. The 4 Beatles were married 9 times altogether. Frank Sinatra was married 4 times. Marilyn Monroe 3 times. Many of the most famous religious leaders were married multiple times or had sexual affairs. None of those lives reflected the I'll love you forever sentiments of the music they sang or the movies they were in or the sermons they preached. He goes on to say, like a lot of people, I tend to watch what people do, not what they say. As an animal species, we should follow our biology, not our mythology. Go ahead and enjoy romance, the thrill of the first kiss, the passion of new love. But understand that, like the Wizard of Oz, there's often not much behind the curtain. When did you first realize that romance, sold to us by movies and songs, doesn't match reality? What would it mean to enjoy romance without being ruled by it? While romance clouds our minds, social media scrambles our nervous system. And let's take a look at how tech and biology are rewiring our expectations of love, often without us noticing. Well, this is my wife's computer. I think it doesn't work right. Social media and biology shape our lives. So social media is distorting our self-image, our body image, and our social expectations. As humanists, we can ask hard questions. Is social media affecting my view of potential partners, my view of myself? And what can I do to counter these effects? So our hormones affect us even when we don't realize it. Social media manipulates perceptions and triggers sexual responses as well as stress responses. After all, we are hormonal animals. We need to learn to regulate social media's impact on us. For example, when you're feeling disconnected, do you reach for a connection or a screen? I mean, that's an issue that we all deal with from time to time. What if we taught kids that love isn't magic, it's a skill set? Let's now explore why so many relationships that begin with connection and passion eventually end in frustration or fall apart entirely. So, satiation, growth, and the myth of the soulmate. Why do breakups actually happen? Love doesn't always end in heartbreak. Sometimes it just ends in boredom or quiet resentment or two people wondering how they got from passion to parallel lives. Let's talk about the reality of long-term relationships and why growth often means change. So satiation, one of the reasons why marriages end up is satiation. People get tired of each other and don't know how to keep the relationship alive. We're animals, sex and attraction rely on novelty and stimulation. Another issue that comes up that undermines marriages is values conflict. As we evolve, changes in our values can cause major shifts in worldview that is hard for the other person to relate to in some cases. And particularly for humanists, a person that leaves religion or their worldview shifts, if one changes political views, conflict may ensue and sexual discovery may precipitate new feelings and need to explore and experience more. So another issue is, why are breakups and divorce so emotionally devastating? He thinks because too many relationships are codependent. Two people seeking the security they didn't feel in childhood or trying to find a parent figure. Healthy relationships are not dominated by codependence or parent-child dynamics. He goes on to say the soulmate idea is a romanticized relic, and it's a deeply religious one. If it were real, why are so many soulmates divorced within a decade? It's a notion that projects an unrealistic idea of human relationships. The idea that all things will be wonderful and nothing will change in relationships because we are soulmates. He said he'd seen many people who spent years preparing for the wedding but were wholly unprepared for the marriage. He said that there's data out there saying that if you spend more than $20,000 in your wedding, you're 1.6 times more likely to divorce than people who spent between $5,000 and $10,000 in their wedding. And if you only spend $1,000 in the wedding, you have the lowest divorce rate. And that might be related to, divorce costs money. So if you only spend $1,000, you may not have the money to get divorced. But, I'm not sure that's real relevant information, but it's sort of interesting, I think, to talk further about that. Another thing this guy talks about is he detests the idea of a relationship failure. What if the end of a relationship isn't a failure, but a natural completion of a season? Divorce would be so much more tolerable if it weren't for the unrealistic romantic beliefs on which marriage is built. If the old models no longer work, and many clearly don't, what can we build in their place? What does a relationship look like when it's grounded not in dogma and romance, but in reason, compassion, and mutual respect? What if we looked at the end of a long-term relationship as a completion, not a failure? If we're no longer following patriarchal blueprints or religious rules, what kind of relationship structures make sense? Humanism gives us the freedom and the responsibility to create better ones. So, rebuilding relationships on humanist values. Patriarchal beliefs make people, not just women, behave in ways that go against their nature. Is marriage a sex license? It was in the past, a central feature of patriarchal control. But women don't owe men sex, in or out of marriage. And men don't owe women celibacy or monogamy. We don't own each other. We're partners, not masters and servants. This principle applies equally to LGBTQ relationships. Again, happiness comes from within, not from your partner. A good partner enhances your life. They are not your life. And one of his bigger ideas is, what if instead of just sex education, we taught relationship education? What if we taught how our brains and bodies respond to attraction, how the new relationship energy that comes out of the blossoming romance affect our perceptions? Let's teach teens and young adults the biology of human connection. Help them move beyond Disney fantasies. Let them experience a thrill of new love and also understand the romantic energy is real but temporary, and when it fades, they'll have the tools to decide what to do next. So let's bring this all down to earth. These ideas aren't just theoretical. They play out in real lives, real relationships, and real strategies. Well, come on, mister. He presents 7 case studies. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I thought I'd pick 2. They're really short case studies. These are case studies that show how humanist values can help people navigate modern relationship dilemmas. And I'll take a case study 1 to talk. It's only a paragraph, short paragraph, and it's entitled "The Caregiver's Guilt." The background is a 53-year-old Catholic woman's husband is terminally ill. She remains devoted to his care, but starts a secret sexual relationship with someone she trusts. Of course, the conflict is she experiences deep guilt and shame for wanting intimacy while her husband is dying. And the humanist reflection is, instead of framing this as sin or betrayal, a humanist approach would ask, is she violating an ethical agreement or responding to a human need for connection, comfort, and release? Could her needs be honestly met if cultural shame didn't cloud her judgment? And the takeaway is, humanism allows us to ask, what does compassion for oneself and others look like in times of grief and change? And he goes on several more. I thought I'd pick the 7th one just to go a little bit further in this. And the 7th one is a deep religious couple deconverts from religion over a 3-year time period. Once out of religion, this couple became humanists. The process led to a re-examination of their relationship and values, and this led them to divorce after 23 years of marriage and 2 children. They carefully managed their divorce using humanist values and compassion for each other, and today, 3 years later, they are closer as friends than they were even as spouses. Then he went on a lot of other stuff, but I'm going to skip over that, really. So the conclusion is the future of love is ours to shape. What do humanist relationships look like? What ideas and ethics might guide us? What principles might we teach our children? In the end, our biology is pointing the way. Our cultures, across cultures and throughout history, even our most celebrated thinkers and artists, Albert Einstein, Bertrand Russell, our book this month, and I'm reading it right now. I hope it's this month, I think. Anyway, we're reading his book this month. Okay. So, yeah, across culture and throughout history, even our most celebrated thinkers and artists, Albert Einstein, Bertrand Russell, Margaret Atwood, Madeleine Murray O'Hair, and so many more, including people named Humanist of the Year by the American Humanist Association, None of these people lived monogamy as a life ideology. While humans crave connection, we do not naturally bond for life. And yet, we continue to tell ourselves stories of forever love, soulmates, and lifelong fidelity as if they were laws of nature rather than cultural inventions. And he said, I would submit that simply living more honestly might actually help many relationships last longer, maybe even a lifetime, and be more fulfilling for both partners. Let's stop making promises we can't keep. As humanists, we have a unique opportunity and responsibility to rethink relationships outside the confines of shame, control, and religious dogma. We can recognize that much of what passes for morality around relationships is actually about control, especially the control of women's sexuality. And that controls the lifeblood of patriarchal religions worldwide. So we need a new story, not a fairy tale. Romantic music, love, poetry, Hollywood endings are delightful. They're fun and nostalgic, but they're not reality. And like any illusion, they become dangerous when we mistake them for maps of reality. And he says we're at a cultural inflection point. The institution for marriage as we've known it is faltering, not because people don't care about commitment, but because the model we inherited does not fit our biology or current understanding of human mating behavior. I thought this interesting point. He points out that no-fault divorce cracked the edifice of patriarchy, and now it's time to take the next step. Divorce may end marriages, but it doesn't end the outdated assumptions that cause so much pain, the belief that love must be eternal, that sex equals morality, or that autonomy is betrayal. Let's build something better together. Let's create a humanist framework for relationships, one that prioritizes honesty, autonomy, and deep mutual respect, one that teaches biology of love alongside the ethics of consent, and one that affirms emotional safety and sexual freedom in our evolving needs as human beings. If a relationship lasts a lifetime, that's wonderful. It does not make it better or worse than other relationships that do not last a lifetime. And going off on a tangent, I mean, one thing is, this says that marriages might not last forever. I mean, that's our cultural baggage. But look at it, half of marriages aren't lasting a lifetime today, and a quarter of the marriages that last a lifetime aren't very satisfactory, according to our speaker today. So, humanists are not bound by superstition or tradition, but we are deeply bound by our humanity. Let's strive to build relationships not on guilt, ownership, or fantasy, but on freedom, empathy, and mutual flourishing. The future of love is not written. We get to write it thoughtfully, courageously, and together. And thank you, and that is where he ended his talk. And I can say that the American Humanist Association is a big educational institution. We're teaching humanist celebrants, and we do a lot of education work, more than the others, American Atheists and the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And I've been to our executive director and said, we really ought to build this idea, something more than just a bunch of thoughts put together, into syllabus maybe, into training for young people. Because some of these ideas really, I think, are relevant. They're controversial, but they're relevant that would help our society move forward. So I apologize for putting out so much information, but I thought his talk was had good ideas mixed in it. If I had rewritten it, I'd have organized it a little differently, I think. But anyway, any thoughts, comments, or? Yeah, Lynn?
Hey, can we pass the microphone?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I guess we might need to turn it
Hello, is it on? Is it? John, at the bottom, is you push it on, or what? Oh.
There we go.
We have such...
Here you go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to know where the children are in all this.
Tell us more about that. The children of divorces are disadvantaged.
I think part of the commitment, when you make a commitment with someone, it's also a commitment to raise children together. So then what happens? Because if people are just going to do their own thing, which is what it sounds like if you're married for a while, then there's no stability for the children.
Yeah, this is not about people doing their own thing. This is about people being educated so that they don't make commitments, relationship commitments based on romance, but make sure their values and their relationship is such they can renegotiate their relationship over time to be mutually beneficial to
But where,
everybody.
again, where are the children in that?
Okay. Half of marriages end in divorce today. Another quarter aren't very satisfying to the people
Sorry,
involved.
but
so-
men walk away. They just disappear
Yeah. Okay.
in this society, Yeah.
society. And that we need to change. We need to make sure they're mutually rewarding and respectful and be trained so that both partners understand they have a right to renegotiate their relationship over time.
I'm just saying, let's keep an eye on the kids, because that's why they're in so much trouble now,
Good point.
in my view.
Yeah, good point. Any other comments, Pat? Why don't you?
Well, I'll do the other side of this. I have been married more than once, and
You're an expert.
actually it's 3 times, but the last one died 15 years ago, so you can't, you know. But I know your question, because it's the one that I used to worry about the most, was about my kids, you know, what was going to happen during the process. And in my opinion, lots of tough things did happen. It did, and I know that it affected my kids in many ways. However, I have 2 daughters that waited until they were 30 years old to get married, instead of getting married at 21, you know. And I have daughters who have been married for over 25 years. And I asked them, I have asked them, how did you learn that? You know, how did you didn't learn that from me, so how did you learn? They said, we did everything the opposite of what you did. That is exactly what my kids said. So, you know, and they have good husbands, good kids, you know, all that kind of stuff. But the interesting kind of thing is that my grandkids, 3 of them, the boys are around 22, the girls 20, but the boys, when I talk to them, and they are almost 22 and they have never had a date, either one of them. They're smart, and this whole generation, it's a little different. They're smart, they're attractive, they're funny, and yet they've never had a date, but they're in their minds, they definitely look forward to marriage and raising children and having a home. That is where they're at. My granddaughter, who is 20, is more like, no way in hell. You know? So I think that maybe guys and women are still approaching things differently. I mean, this was a lot of information, what you said.
Yeah.
But one of the best thing that I got out of this, Jim, is that I realized, based on my first marriage was 1967. You couldn't have your own checking account back in those days. And just as an additional thing, rape was allowed by husbands. You know, I mean, I'm talking about the times. I'm not saying that was my thing. But I realized that I pretty much never had a chance, because I was raised in a very Catholic family with all of that nonsense and guilt and all that kind of stuff. And I also had an alcoholic father. So I didn't have, you know, the person who you're supposed to look up to, I didn't have anything to look up to, you know. So I didn't have a chance, is what I'm thinking. So it sort of took some of the guilt away from me just listening to this stuff today. Yeah. But anyway, in answer to Lynn, I think there are ways that kids will survive, you know. I don't have all the answers, but I just know that for me, my biggest fear was what would happen with my kids, and yet they turned out to be a lot more stable than I was.
Yeah. I think, Tanya, you had a comment, didn't you? Oh, no, okay. Yeah, good. You're going to pass the microphone right down the line.
I just wanted to, because I wanted to follow up on what you were saying, Pat, you know, as you were relating your story and joking about how your daughters were doing pretty well. It made me think that there's plenty of examples like that where children of divorce do quite well and have really good relations with their parents. It also made me think of something called adverse childhood experiences, or ACE scores. Is anyone familiar with that here? Yeah. So basically, it's the things that go on in a children's life that have a really profound effect, negative effect on them, that can increase the risk, of course, for mental health problems, but also for a lot of physical illnesses as well. And I believe, I'll have to look at this up afterwards, but I believe that divorce was initially part of the ACE score, and then subsequent sociologic research has shown that children in the right situation when it comes to divorce do quite well. And probably, Jim, thank you for this presentation, probably due to the exact things that you were talking about, you know, evolving, talking about it, sharing the information, having respect for each other, even if the marriage doesn't continue.
Yeah, go ahead. Eve, you have something you want to say?
Yeah. Pat and I have been married for 62 years, and I'm not quite sure how it could be better. I guess if she would do what I tell her to do, that might work. Or if I would do what she told me to do, that might work better.
So you've negotiated a good
We
situation.
negotiate all the time. I mean, it's daily. We're always discussing things, you know.
Yeah.
And it works out in the end. But it wasn't always good because it started out with a bad note. I had to get married in a Catholic church and be warned by a priest that, you know, don't do this and raise your kids Catholic and all that. I think I've finally gotten over that, though.
Okay. I think he wanted to say something, and we'll get down to Cyril here.
Yeah, so as a young person, I'm 23. This is a very interesting topic for me, and I'm not a Gen Z representative, you know. There's a lot of different perspectives. But when I visit my grandparents and I see what they've built, it feels, and you know, they live in Slatedale, regular ass house, you know. But it feels like a fairy tale. It feels like something that is beyond socioeconomic status. Like, I, at 23, am in a better situation than they were when they were 23.
Yeah.
But it feels like something that is completely unattainable. And also, like, why would we want that? Because, you know, I'm in the climate space. I think we should be encouraging young people to not have children. We're going to run out of resources because, like, shit's just going to get really bad. And I think a lot of people my age find a really hard time seeing value in the future and see more value in making sure everybody's good right now. And so marriage is sort of valueless, and so is having children. And again, everybody has different perspectives on it, but this is something that when I talk to people my age that we all sort of agree. And I think a lot of people my age have this stuff in their head about having good relationships, but the permanence, and this is sort of what you're talking about, the permanence of then, it's fading. And I think it's fading partly because progress is happening, but I think it's also happening because we don't see ourselves having the opportunity of building a life for ourselves that way. When we're 70, 80 years old, I mean, there's a high probability that the world will not even be able to sustain the amount of marriages and children and property, you know, that it does now. So, you know, again, I don't represent Gen Z, but I think that's the growing sentiment among people my age.
Yeah. Certainly, I think we're all aware that countries are shrinking. I mean, Japan has a hard time bringing in immigrants permanently, bring them in for contracts, but it's a very nice culture, but it's very deep, and it's hard for foreigners to really thrive in Japan. They don't bring in immigrants like mad. Well, their society is actually shrinking, and this is Mexico and these other places. You're going to see shrinking societies. So if you're concerned about resources, we might very well see. I mean, today, this month, America is a shrinking country, right? If we have 1.66 births and we need 2.1 per woman to keep our population level, we're actually shrinking this month. You know, so we may end up coming to a reduction in consumption. Ryan, it was.
Well,
I'm sorry, we'll get you next.
going off of that, I just want to point out that personally, I feel like while they can be together, you know, marriage and having children, they don't have to be. And so it's entirely possible for people to get married and never have kids. It's entirely possible to have kids while never having gotten married. And so, like, at the end of what you were saying there, you mentioned that, like, we don't have the resources for more marriages, but it's like marriages don't consume more resources than not being married. As a matter of fact, if two married people who were living in separate houses are now cohabitating, now you're using fewer resources than you were before. So I just want to, decouple those things, and because even from the beginning, talking about whether or not, we have to worry about the kids in this, and it's like, well, that's only if there is kids. Like, you can get married without having kids. I have friends who they have 3 kids together. They've been together for 15 years, and they never got married because they didn't care about getting married. So they're not necessarily coupled. Is all I want to say.
Well, and if I could say something on that too, real quick, is what I meant is that, like, it's not so much the marriages. I mean, the marriages are. I think young people are disinterested in marriage because it feels sort of stale and false. But I think it's more when I'm talking about resources. I'm talking about children. Like, again, as being in the climate space, like, we all have to tell ourselves that we're optimistic. But we're all secretly not, and I'm just a little more vocal about it amongst my circles. Like, we're just not going to have enough food, And so I see no reason to bring a kid into this world where if they then have children that they will not be able to survive and they'll live a significantly worse life than my own. I mean, that's something that everybody worries about. But now it's going to start affecting literally every person, even the people that have a good amount of money. So that's what I meant by that. But
Yeah, Cyril did actually to say a few words.
Yeah, so like there's that old saw that a man marries a woman thinking she'll never change, a woman marries a man thinking that she'll change him, and both are usually disappointed. So I want to talk a little bit about change, because I've changed. There's one time in my life where I thought sex was the highest form of expression of togetherness and only belonged in marriage. And, to be fair, the symbol of the act itself lends itself to that interpretation. And now, to me, I view sex as something like, you want to go out bowling, you want to catch a game, you want to have sex, when two people marry with the first understanding that, we are going to be, exclusive to each other, and one person changes and has what we might consider a more enlightened view, they might consider a more, horrible, sinful, degrading, bestial view. What does that person owe to the other person? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just wanted to add to that, because, growing up, I was kind of in the mindset of a relationship lasted forever. And a takeaway from the presentation I got was that it can be just a phase. It's just a thing. But in my mind, it was like, I'm in this now, and it's going to go on, and this is it. This is my person. And that's why, high school breakups were so devastating. Because it was like, no, this was supposed to last forever. What happened? It only lasted a month. That's crazy. So that was a takeaway I got from it.
Yeah.
Another point I wanted to make was on the dating apps, that they're designed to make people or to keep people single. I mean, they're designed to make money, so I appreciate that. But I messaged a dating app because they wanted me to sign up for a contract, like a 3-month contract. I'm like, but the point is to meet someone. What if that happens next week? Then I'm signed up for this. I'm like, do I still use it? Or
Yeah.
do I waste my money? What do I do with that? So it's it's a weird thing because, they're trying to make money, but they're claiming to work and bring people together. And it's you can't really have both.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's
Certainly, many dating apps end up in relationships. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not completely a failure. But I think she wanted to say. Yeah.
Okay. I think I wanted to jump off what you were saying because I misunderstood the point of this lecture today. I thought it was more about how are people going to connect, and I think a big issue with connecting these days is, number one, dating platforms. There are very few relationships that come from those. The statistics are dismal. But that takes people out of the real world, so they don't meet. But like jumping off what you said, how do we connect in new relationships when everything feels so overwhelmingly pointless? You know, techno-feudalism is the new thing now. I mean, we're going to run out of water. What's romantic about that? You go,
Yeah.
you go out and meet someone, and if they're not talking about that, they're an idiot. But if they are talking about that, you know what I mean? It's just not romantic. So how do we get over that? How do we connect with people, even friendships, when if you're not talking about what's really going on, again, I feel like you're in oblivion, but if you are talking about what's really going on, you're sort of depressed.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I agree. That's basically what I was getting at. It's interesting when you were saying about it being a skill set. I actually like cringe for a moment because I agree, but I think that's sort of the problem. Is my generation is really like everything has to have a function, or else it's a waste of time. And I think that's why my generation consumes the drugs they do and does whatever they do in the social media, because that's their dopamine off of that. But I find that when I'm in social interactions, I have to be like, I don't have to talk about Donald Trump. I can talk about something else. You know what I mean? But as you're saying, if you're not talking about it, it's like, what are we doing right now? We're talking about, chilies or something, but it's like, the world's on fire. What's the point of even doing this? I do think that something that has to happen with my generation is we have to allow ourselves the space and the room to grow as an individual and realize that we're not just a cog in the progressive machine, and that we can do that sometimes, and that we can get better and be lifted up by the people around us. But we have to sort of pull back and maybe even incorporate a little bit of that magic into that skill set learning.
Anyone else that hasn't spoken want to say anything? Yeah, go ahead.
I apologize for getting here late.
You're good. It's on.
Yeah, anyway,
Good.
it seems like there's economic factors that I may have missed about why young men who have $60,000 in debt are not an attractive mate.
Yeah.
So these cultural issues I think are much more important, like you're saying about.
Yeah.
But the cultural wars are we're losing them to billionaire right-wing Christian nationalist fascists. So if there's no other community, these people, they I passed a lot of fancy churches on the way here today, and sense of community for something else. There's no option, So it seems like that side that doesn't want to think critically is growing and consolidating their power. And I recently finished a book called Power Worshippers, and it was pretty frightening to me, the wealth and so that's I don't know if it's related, but my youngest daughter is part of the gay community, and she has multiple partners that are fascinating, and they're always treating each other well, but it's completely open.
Yeah.
And my other daughter's leaving the country because she lost her job with the Trump cuts, and she met someone in the Netherlands.
Oh, yeah.
And they have a stable society. 90% of their population makes the same amount of money. They have health care, affordable education, transportation systems. So when they fall, what's the dynamic about the economic portion, do people stay in relationships or choose relationships, based on economics?
So I don't think our speaker is addressing all the world's problems. He's talking about how to build a relationship with someone else, same gender, different gender, supportive for your life,
But you have to
given
do that.
these issues.
You have to do that within the environment
Yeah.
that you're born into, and if that
Yeah.
environment is controlled by billionaires
Yeah.
who want to, pretend climate isn't an issue.
Yeah. What we do know is that values are important. Harmonized values or aligned values is important to having a good relationship. I think that's a fair thing to say. I'm not an expert at that.
Yeah.
But thanks, Glenn.
Didn't know if there was an economics.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about economics much at all. Anybody else? Anybody? All right. Any other comments or questions? Thanks for your attention. I apologize for so much content, but it was hard to really develop this into an interactive classroom, and I'm not an expert at it. I just presented what this guy said. But I'm hopeful the American Humanist Association will develop this some more and put out syllabus or training or whatever to help educate people.
Just the right amount.
You think? Yeah, I thought it was too much, but anyway. So I didn't care for the organization of it, but I didn't want to spend 8 hours to rehash it into something else. And the guy was quite eloquent. Yeah. Pat?
I'm just thinking, though, that pretty much the humanist values that were discussed are sometimes things that I don't think people thought about 40, 50 years ago. But now, more people, hopefully, are incorporating those thoughts into the relationships that they go into in life. And so that in itself, it may be an improvement, that if we just live that life,
Yeah.
it would certainly be a better world. And maybe marriage is just something that it doesn't have to be on paper, and you just, and 100 years from now, it won't be. It will be people just living humanist values and sharing a life for whatever period of time they choose.
Yeah.
And it might be 10 years and it might be 65,
Yeah.
But using those values, I think, would be, so I agree with you that I hope that the American humanists really get on this,
Push the issue. All right,
it out.
good. All right, thank you. I think that wraps us up for today. Thanks for coming, everybody. Oh, yeah, well, thank you. So next month, we're going to have an open discussion. It'll be a good time, so come on out.